Donald Trump is attempting to get us used to authoritarianism. They should not be allowed in our schools, in our places of worship, or in our medical centers. That does not make our communities safer. We heard so often that people were frustrated with the lies that Donald Trump is telling about immigrants.
I did want to jump over to immigration because that's another place I think we're really in sync. Broadly speaking, to start, and especially with how we've seen the Trump administration dealing with a lot of these things, could you just lay out your thoughts on ICE and what we've seen happening with ICE and just in that regard?
Yeah. Arizona's 7th congressional district, where I'm running to represent us, is parts of Tucson, where I was born and raised, parts of Phoenix, and hundreds of miles of the US-Mexico border. And we have traveled all across this district. We did a Crash Outer Congress tour where we went from cities like Ajo, small rural areas, on down to border cities like Douglas and Nogales and San Luis. And we sat with community members literally often over a meal and talked to them about the issues they cared about, answered their questions. And when we were in these border cities, we heard so often that people were frustrated with the lies that Donald Trump is telling about immigrants, immigration, and our border. In this most recent budget bill, they approved over $50 billion specifically for border militarization. This was a budget bill, by the way, that nobody from Arizona's 7th congressional district was voting on. Right? We don't have a member of Congress right now. There is a vacancy because our member passed away while in office. And so nobody was actually voting on our behalf, despite border militarization being at the forefront of that budget bill and directly impacting us here in Southern Arizona. And so, you know, when it comes to ICE agents in our communities, I've sat with folks who have told me that they feel less safe, not because of immigrants, but because of ICE. Right. And that is regardless of their own immigration status. I've talked to our indigenous communities who talk about the ways that they feel less safe letting their children travel freely. I had a woman tell me that her kids don't want to go from Nogales to Tucson because they have to pass through a border checkpoint on the way, and it makes them feel bad. Right. I've talked to folks who say that ICE has disrupted their ability as 4th-generation farmers, despite the folks that work for them doing everything right on immigration, that it's disrupted their ability to run their business and work with their employees.
Completely agree with you. What is something you would do as a representative of the district to keep all of those in the district safe from these kinds of attacks from ICE? If, let's say, what happened in LA comes to your district?
I mean, the first thing we have to do is bar ICE from our safe places. As it stands, they have very little to no regulation, and they should not be allowed in our schools, in our places of worship, or in our medical centers. That does not make our communities safer. I joined protesters here in Tucson, Sign and Sign, when immigration officials attempted to separate a mother and her newborn at Tucson Medical Center. That does not make our communities safer. In fact, it scares people out of going to school or going to church or getting medical care when they need it. And that's just, I mean, that's an easy, and I think something that people all across the board, red, blue, rural, urban, can agree on.
Yeah, you would think that intuitively it would be bipartisan in nature because the whole Second Amendment argument always hinges on tyranny of the government and things exactly like this. So you would think both sides could get behind that. I did want to zoom out actually and ask you 2 final questions, kind of one about Republicans and one about Democrats. What is the biggest threat that you think Republicans pose? And then how would you push back against that in Congress?
Donald Trump is attempting to get us used to authoritarianism. He's turning up the dial time after time, whether it's ignoring what judges have to say when he sends out deportation orders and they say no, overstepping state governments like we saw in California, when he sent in the troops against the wishes of state and local governments. And maybe most damningly, he doesn't care what people have to say. We protest, we stand between our neighbors and these masked ICE agents and unmarked vehicles, right? And Donald Trump believes that he is above political consequence, and so do his Republicans. In fact, in Arizona's 6th congressional district, our sister district just next door, there was recently a budget bill town hall. Mm-hmm. Over 200 Arizonans showed up to ask their questions. Now, the representative of Arizona's 6th congressional district, Juan Ciscomani, was invited and failed to attend. In fact, the other candidates in Arizona's 7th congressional district, other Democrats running for this nomination, were invited and failed to attend. And so I would actually say that on both sides of the aisle, it would seem that a lot of representatives are scared of the people they represent. They don't want to sit in a town hall and be asked hard questions. They get up and leave when the questions get too hard, or they don't show up at all. And it would seem to me that while the Republicans are consolidating power and getting us used to authoritarianism, Democrats are failing to stand up and failing to show up where it matters. And right now, we just can't cede a single seat, even like the one I'm running in, which is safer and bluer, to somebody who's going to just check the boxes. We need a champion in every seat right now if we're going to get out of this.
Yeah, and that actually kind of goes into what my question was going to be about Democrats, which was like, largely, what did you think went wrong either with the party or in this election that kind of allowed Trump to secure the trifecta? And then what do you think needs to change? Like, what's the change you represent that you think needs to happen for the party to not allow that to happen again?
Yeah, part of it comes down to age, right? I mentioned at the top that I'm 25 years old. I'm the minimum age to run for Congress, which would make me the youngest member and also the first woman of our generation, Gen Z. And now this special election in Arizona, 2025, is the first referendum on if we learned our lessons in 2024, or if we're going to do things the same way. And a central issue in the 2024 election was first and foremost age, that Joe Biden was too old, and people said that, and the establishment failed to listen. And number two, people were frustrated, no matter how misguided, that there was not a primary process, that they didn't have an opportunity to weigh in on their nominee. And I have brought both of those lessons directly into the race that I am in. We have the opportunity to replace one of the oldest members of Congress with the youngest. I'm running against someone with a legacy last name, the former congressman's daughter, right? I've been told that it wasn't my turn to stay out of this election, but I believe that people deserve healthy primaries. They deserve candidates they can get excited about and elections they can engage with. And it's why I'm in this race. And we've surged 25% in the polls in just over a month. We have closed the gap with the establishment favorite candidate to single digits within the margin of error. And that is the lesson Democrats should take away. It's not enough to get up in your stump speech and say, we need a new generation of leaders, and get a round of applause if you're not willing to put your actions behind it. When newer and younger comes around with a decade of advocacy experience, I've watched as other people in this party have put their thumb on the scale in an open seat.
I completely agree. And you can hardly call it democracy when, you know, the thumb's on the scale in the primary where you're choosing your candidate in the direction of the party. It's hardly democratic in my opinion. And I'm glad that you hold the same. Before I let you go, I want to give you the chance. You can have the floor. Be sure to shout out like your website, anything like that, the day of the election, anything we didn't touch on. The floor is yours. Let the people know.
Yeah, you can find us at dejafoxx.com. And there you can read more about our story, where we fall on the issues. If there's something you didn't hear about or don't see, there's a box at the bottom where you can input your feedback, and we read it once a week. And now you can also, from anywhere, get involved in this election. We don't get a do-over, and it's coming up fast, July 15th. So sign up to volunteer virtually. Make a call, send a text. You can do it from anywhere. And if you have some extra money, pitch in. This is a campaign powered 99% by small dollar donors. We've raised over $800,000 for more than 26,000 people, and our average contribution is $28, which means if you have $30 to spare, you would be one of our big dollar donors.
Awesome. And yeah, for anyone who's more interested to hear about the campaign, I'll have the link to the website in the description as well. I want to thank you again for taking time to speak with us, and I wish you the best of luck in your election next week.
Happy to do it. Thanks for taking the time.